Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And we are streaming today on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. So that's facebook.com/Activist Post. Well, today, this is a show that I've been waiting for all week. Last week, we came in, the Vegas shooting had just happened. I presented a theory that at the time, people were like, their first reaction is, that's so outlandish. What are you smoking? Like, get off of this. This is what, before we had any information, I came in and I said, I believe that this was a drone's weapons test. Now, what's interesting is, as of today, this week, you'll notice that if you go to Google News, for instance, the Vegas shooting has basically vanished off the top stories. It's even vanished out of the US stories. One of the reasons why is because they don't know what the fuck happened. They have no motive for this guy, no nothing. And everybody across the world, everybody, even mainstream people are like, this story stinks. And as of yet, I have still not heard any explanation or theory that holds as much water as my own. Now, what's interesting is that we are going to get into telling a story today. Our guest is Ray Vahey of BitChute. He's going to be towards the end of the show. We have about an hour and a half to tell a story. To help me do that, and we'll talk more about this, to help me do that, as always, is my good friend, co-host and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian, good morning.
Good morning, Vin.
Okay. So we've spoken throughout the week, and we've talked a little bit this morning.
Yeah.
I want to get into this. I'm looking at my show notes. There. Okay, I've got them. Great. So we've been talking a little bit this morning about, I want to explain to people what it is that we're going to do, because it's different than what I'm seeing.
Very
right?
different.
Okay, so you know that I hate the conspiracy theory shit.
Right.
I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go into it. Mm-hmm. I don't discuss it. One of the reasons why is because, as I've always said, and we do deep dives on this show, and what we try to do is we go as close to source material as we possibly can. We look at it, we examine what's
mm-hmm.
actually there, the connections that are actually there. We rarely go outside of the story, right? Because what's inside the story is there. You don't need to add shit.
Right.
You don't need to add shit, right? We've done that on many issues. We've done that on several hacking issues. We've done that on the Russian connection to the elections. Mm-hmm. We've done that on the WannaCry situation, right? Yeah. We've done that on we've done that on DAPL, right? Since the beginning of the show, the Dakota Access Pipeline, right? Since the beginning of the show, what I'm interested in is the information is out there. Let's go out there and get it, right? So what we're going to do today is we're going to tell a story, and I want to say that up front, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this story has two parts to it. The first thing that we're going to do is, let me put it like this. The main problem that I have with most of these conspiracy theorist people and adding in shit like, and I'm going to tell you what I mean, adding in shit like crisis actors and all of this that, it was staged, nobody died, and they did and this and that. And I'm like, the reason I have a problem with that is it's so much conjecture and there's zero proof.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part about it is their story contradicts the facts that we know on the ground. Like, to discount a story of a crisis actor, basically all you have to do is show that one of the people that they've said is a crisis actor is a real fucking person.
Right.
The other thing that you get into is you start to slander people. Mm-hmm. Like, where is your proof coming from? Mm-hmm. Your proof is coming from because this person kind of looks like this other person?
Yeah.
That's what paranoid schizophrenics do.
Mm-hmm.
What paranoid schizophrenics do is they have some grand conspiracy that goes on in their mind, and then every single person in the world, they find a way to include in their grand unified theory, right? But that's not what a prosecutor does, and that's what we're going to try to look at here. Like what we were saying before the show started, I said, look, fundamentally, in any criminal case, what you're talking about is you're talking about two stories.
Mm-hmm.
The prosecutor's going to tell a story. The defense is going to tell a story. And the jury's going to look, and the jury's going to say, which story is more believable?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the difference between guilty and not guilty. You look at the O.J. Simpson trial. If it doesn't fit, it must acquit. Johnny Cochran and Dershowitz and all of those guys, they told a story. They told a story that was better than the one that Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden told. And that was it. Now, right now, the official story is being told by the police, by the FBI, everybody involved. Already, that story smells so bad.
Yeah.
No one fucking believes it.
Nobody believes it.
No one believes it.
Even people that I would think would believe it don't.
Just your mainstream
Just
average
person.
Okay. I think that that's the first thing to notice about this story. Because what you're looking for, and we talked about this earlier, what you're looking for when you're trying to get to the core of a crime, when a crime is committed, and clearly something's being covered up. I think everybody gets at that.
Right.
The one thing that you want to look at, and the one thing that's the most important that any investigator is looking for, is they're looking for inconsistencies, right? That's why investigators want to bring somebody in and interrogate them. That's why they want to give them a polygraph.
Right.
Because they want the person who is innocent can tell a complete story. Where were you on the night of such and such and such? What were you doing at blah, blah, blah? What was your relationship with the victim? All of these things. An innocent person can tell a complete story with no inconsistencies. See, a guilty person has to put in inconsistencies in the story. And what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive.
Yeah, seriously.
And I think that what people are seeing from the official story is purposeful deception.
Exactly.
It's not that there's anything in particular that you can point to, but it's that there's all of these things, that inconsistencies, and they pop up and then they somehow have some weird explanation where people are like, that doesn't make sense.
One thing I found interesting was the confusion that's going on. And I started researching confusion and what it does, and there's a hypnotic presence with confusion, and actually Milton Erickson said that it's probably one of the most powerful ways that you can hypnotize.
It's confusion.
Yeah, it's through confusion.
Yeah.
So
it's certainly for what they call the it's got a name, fast induction or quick induction.
Right.
They often use the look over here, bah! Like that.
Right.
You know, it's
right.
like it does something
fries
to your brain.
Fries your mind,
right.
and you don't know what to think, and then you can slip in a command. You can slip in, you know.
Right.
So yeah, there's that there. I started looking at. It's been a crazy week too. I started looking at the energetic, trauma or energetic principles attached to this as well. And one thing that I found consistent, and this actually put up a quote right before the show, is fear. The amount of fear that's being injected.
Well, but here's what's interesting. I think that this is a key point that you're bringing up and why this is different. So it goes to, a lot of people have called this a false flag. The reason why this isn't a false flag is directly because of fear.
Exactly.
Okay? But there's a lot less fear. This particular act, even though it was the more people killed in this mass shooting than in others, there's been a lot less fear. Here's some of the reasons why. All adults.
Yeah.
Okay? All, for the most part, kind of vanilla, mostly white people. Mostly from places where there's not a huge political bent to it. I said in a tweet, I was like, if you were going to kill a group of people that the media would care the least about, who would you kill and where would you do it? And if it's not at a country music festival, I don't know where the fuck it is. Because look, that place, that venue, does a lot of things. It does things where it's kids stuff, where there would be more young people. You know, it does like Warped. It does Warped Tour is there. They have, they do motocross jumping there. They do all kinds of stuff. They're about to have like R&B stuff there the next week that they canceled, right? They didn't kill black people, didn't kill Mexicans, right? They killed the ones that would generate the least fear. So that's something different,
right?
Because if you're really if what your goal is to move people because of course it creates fear. Of course, right? But if your goal is to move people with fear, you do things that create maximum fear, such as the idea that another person like him could be on the loose. Right? So it would be, you have a white supremacist do it.
Right.
You have a Muslim do it. You have a fucking North Korean do it.
Right, the extreme polar opposites of each other.
But that's not what happened here, right? So what we're looking at is these. So now we're getting into the beginnings of why, to me, this thing. It's important to look at the inconsistencies. Now here's the key, and this is what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what we know, what's been reported.
Yeah, what's being reported right now, and
but a lot of what we're going to talk about are not the things that anybody has heard and you won't hear in the official story. We're going to talk about all of the inconsistencies in the official story, and when you see this broad range of inconsistencies, you see what they all stand for, right? We've got a lot to get through. Let's go for it. The first thing that we're going to get at is we're going to get at the latest press conference, which was the press conference from Friday, okay? I've got clips from that. I may have you leave our mics open because I may have you pause it, so be sure to go and put your finger over on the pause button. Let's just start with the press conference and what we know. So this is basically the official story as it's being told right now. Let's go press conference.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kevin McMahill. I'm the Undersheriff for the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And I am going to be providing you an update this afternoon on the Route 91 Music Festival mass murder. To date, we have run down well more than 1,000 leads in this investigation. While some of it has helped create a better profile into the madness of this suspect, we do not still have a clear motive or reason why. I can assure you that we are aware of all aspects of this case, to include the rumor, innuendo, and supposition by many in the public. And I get it. We all want answers. We have looked at everything, literally, to include the suspect's personal life, any political affiliation, his social behaviors, economic situation, and any particular or potential radicalization that so many have claimed. We're also aware, of course, that ISIS has repeatedly claimed responsibility, which today I can tell you that we have no known nexus to. We have been down each and every single one of these paths trying to determine why, to determine who else may have known of these plans. We will continue to investigate each and every one of these areas, as well as all the tips and leads that continue to come in. We must remain focused solely on truth and fact. It's very easy to assume. We're collectively working with the FBI and many other partners to try to get there. At this time, I'll tell you again that we have no credible information to report to you as to motivation. We will not stop, and we'll keep you up to date as anything develops on that. I will tell you, though, that all of the rumor and speculation has not been helpful to our investigation. In the past, terror attacks or mass murder incidents, motive was made very clear in most of those cases, by a note that was left, by a social media post, by a telephone call that was made, by investigators mining computer data. Today, in our investigation, we don't have any of that uncovered. I wish we did. We will and are continuing to investigate with great tenacity and hope to arrive at an answer.
Okay, pause it.
Most of you also now know the name of the man.
Okay, so here's what we've got. Absolutely no. Don't need to go back to us. We'll do it with it here with just the voiceover. Absolutely no motive. This is what he's saying, and he's also saying we've gone down every single path. I think that's key. The other thing that's very key about this, now that we have it paused, do you see anything that stands out to you about this shot right here? Is there anything that stands out to you about this shot?
Yeah, the guy in the background.
Yeah. What stands out? So that guy, I will tell you, because he speaks later, although I I cut that piece because it's not important to this. He's been around. He's an FBI agent. So that's the head of the FBI that is investigating this. What do you find interesting about his body language?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say his body language is very telling.
What is his body language communicating to you?
That he's protecting something. That he's making sure that something does not get told.
Yes. He's there controlling this guy, right? Mm-hmm. He's there standing there. The closeness that he is to him. Mm-hmm. The way that he's got his hands held in front of him.
Even the look on his face.
The look on his face.
Yeah.
His body language is so important. The people who are watching, watch this, because exactly what Christian said, that's exactly what his body language said to me as well. That's one reason why I believe that the police, I do believe that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police believes that they know, and I believe that there are things that are being withheld from them. As he said, they've gone down every path that they could. Mm-hmm. I believe that there are paths that they're being prevented from. So let's continue on. He's going to talk about the security guard.
Mandalay Bay security guard who you've all named in the media, and I'll just reaffirm to you that Jesus Campos is a true hero. I can tell you now just a little bit more that I know about what he did that particular day. We now know that he was dispatched to what they call a door alarm on the 32nd floor. He went up there to investigate the open door, and as he was doing his job diligently, he came under fire by our suspect. As you know, he was struck in the leg. He turned around and retreated. He notified his dispatch, which was absolutely critical to us knowing the location, as well as advising the responding officers as they arrived on that 32nd floor. I can tell you that this was a remarkable effort by a brave and remarkable man. I want to say today that I don't think we've done a good enough job recognizing him and his actions, and for that I apologize. I just want to take the moment and clear the record that he's an absolute hero. There's also a couple of questions that...
Okay, so what we have now is that we know how he was discovered as being in that room was that the security guard went up there because there was an open door at one of the other rooms. Mm-hmm. So now, for those people who don't know about Las Vegas hotels, I know these hotels inside and out. So what I can tell you is the doors are heavy and they close automatically. Yeah. The only way that a door can stay open, there's basically one of two ways. Either one, the typical way that people leave it open is there's a door latch, mm-hmm. or you can, sometimes there's one at the bottom that if you close the door latch and then push the door over it, the door stays open. Or that if you turn the latch and then you close it, that the door will stay open. Now, I've done that before. And I've never had security come up. Right. So I don't know how long one of those doors has to be open before security goes.
I watched a clip with Steve when he was, and this is procedure of when.
Okay, go ahead. It's probably very similar at MGM.
Yeah, he mentioned that it's probably similar, but he said that if a door has not been opened in the casino for 12 hours plus, that they go investigate. So they go knock on the door.
What do you mean if it hasn't been opened?
Yeah, so if there's a do not disturb, or if it's somebody is inside of the room, like if
for 12 hours.
For 12 hours plus, that they would go and knock on the door and send room service.
Aha. So what we have here is the reverse of what the police are saying. They're saying that a door alarm is because a door is open, but like I say, I've done that, and I've never had security come, mm-hmm. and it's been there for a long time. What it sounds like we might be talking about in this case is no one's come out of that room for 12 hours.
Right.
This starts to get much more interesting. Although, to me, that seems silly because I know I've slept in a room at Wynn for longer than 12 hours and stayed in a room for longer than... Something's wrong.
Yeah, something doesn't make sense.
Because the other thing about it is that, like, as I say, I've been in and out of these hotels. I've never heard of this scenario that he's mm-hmm. describing of the open door. And then for it to be in the exact hallway, just by chance, mm-hmm. this is an inconsistency.
Yeah.
Right? So this is an inconsistency, but what it does do is it it creates a scenario whereby we have ostensibly a live shooter in the room shooting out at a security guard at the specific time when the shooting is supposedly taking place. I think that's important.
It is.
I don't think that's a small thing. I think it's important. It's a fucking weird inconsistency in this whole thing. But it gives us at least a timeline. It gives us a timeline. Right. So let's go to the next inconsistency that I feel like is just being passed over, and even the police are like, oh, go ahead.
Continued to come in regards to this tannerite and what materials that we had. You all know we've given you this information about where we found the tannerite in the vehicle. Tannerite is a binary explosive, meaning that it's composed of two substances. We also had a significant amount of that tannerite as a finished product, and we had two chemicals of ammonium nitrate and aluminum powder that, when combined, make the finished product of tannerite. Sorry to tell you, I don't know what he was going to do with all of that tannerite. I wish I did, and we continue to try to find that information out. Okay, the question is, can we
Okay, so now we have tannerite, this explosive, that both the explosive itself and the two components that are necessary to make this explosive are found in his car. And they have no fucking clue what he's going to do with this explosive. This explosive is an inconsistency.
Yep.
This explosive is a dead-end alley, right? So you got to think, this explosive ties to nothing. It was obviously put in the car for some reason. Who would have a vested interest in putting a blind alley, something that would distract a certain amount of investigators and push them in another direction, right? This, to me, looks like sending somebody on a wild goose chase on purpose in a very cheap way, right? Very cheap. But one thing that we got to think about is tannerite, this particular, it's an individual who would know how to make an explosive.
Good point.
Person involved here is someone who knows how to make an explosive. Do we have any evidence that this guy was interested in explosives, that he had a chemistry background or anything like that? But it does speak to whoever put it in the car, doesn't it? It says that whoever put it in the car knows how to manufacture explosive weapons. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So now what I want to do is he's going to answer questions. And this is important. What you and I are going to do, he's going to answer questions. These question and answer things are quick. But so we've seen a little bit of him talking. We've seen a little bit of him giving a statement. Now, what's interesting is this is the undersheriff. They stopped allowing the sheriff, Joe Lombardo, to talk.
Right.
Now, Joe Lombardo, you'll recall, had said some things like, hey, man, we know... Come on, you really believe he didn't have help? Blah, blah, blah. He had said a whole bunch, he had let a whole bunch of things go. Right? Joe doesn't get to talk anymore. Narrative has to be controlled. Now he's going to answer questions. And what I want you to look at while he's answering the question, more important than the answer to the question itself, is his body language and the body language of his FBI handler. So this first one is going to be about, it's a question about if there's an accomplice. Watch his body language and watch the body language of the handler.
Can we confirm whether there's an accomplice or not? I can tell you this, we're very confident that there was not another shooter in that room. What I cannot confirm to you today, and what we continue to investigate, is whether anybody else may have known about this incident before he carried it out. Right, the question is about the tannerite.
Okay. What did you see in that?
One, the FBI guy, I don't know his name, I don't want to say his name or anything, but the FBI guy was making sure that he said the right thing.
So he would make a statement, and the FBI guy would make a little nod.
Yeah, he would say, that's correct. And,
you see that?
Yeah.
You catch that?
And almost with a little smirk, too.
And he hadn't been doing that throughout this whole process.
Right.
But it was almost like, yes, you gave the right answer. Now, what these are tells. These are micro expressions that people make that they don't even realize that they're making. Also, he's very nervous.
Yeah.
And You can tell that he's nervous because you're going to see him now answer about the tannerite, where he's sure about the tannerite, and you're going to see how this answer differs from the last answer. So go ahead.
That we found, and whether we believe he was trying to make it into an IED, I can tell you we found it in the condition that it was, and it did not resemble an IED.
Pause. Okay, so you saw confident, hands in one place, not moving, not looking down, looking straight ahead. Confident. It's not an IED. I know for sure it's not an IED, right? This is a lie detector test right here. So let's go with this next one because this is interesting. This is about the video.
Question is, have we reviewed the video from the Mandalay Bay? I can tell you that there's voluminous amounts of video from many different locations. We have reviewed it, and we have not located any other person that we believe to be a suspect at this point.
So,
same thing.
Fidgeting.
Right.
You see him adjust his gun belt. Right? Looks down. His handler nods his head. He says, we can tell you there's voluminous amounts of video. Handler nods his head, keeps nodding, continuously nodding. Obviously, that voluminous amounts of video is probably one of that handler's exact words. And that's why he's like, yes, you're saying the exact thing.
Exactly.
Right? Okay. Next, this is about a room key.
Question is do we know that anybody else used a room key for the hotel room, and we do not believe that happened.
Pause.
Question is,
handler's moving, handler's nervous about this question, right? He's looking down. He looks down through almost the whole answer, right? About somebody using the room key. That was the two inconsistencies. There was an inconsistency of they found a phone charger that didn't match, and then that someone had used his room key when the car was out of the garage. Now, what people don't understand about this car out of the garage and somebody using the room key is that all the MGM properties have recently, it used to just be free self-parking. But now all the MGM properties, including Mandalay Bay, self-parking is pay.
You have to pay.
Now, when you pay, you go up to the machine, you press the button, the ticket comes out. Have you been in one of these?
Yeah.
What does it say? What does it say on the thing?
It has your license plate number.
License plate being checked.
Yep.
It associates your license plate with the timestamp of when you went into the garage and when you went out of the garage. So it came out, a report, that and also all the room keys have a timestamp of when you go in and out of the room. Someone used his room key when his car was out of the garage. Now he's saying, no, we don't have that's got to get memory hold because that's a huge inconsistency. Okay. Now this last one is about whether or not he's a schizophrenic. Remember, people were saying, oh, he's an undiagnosed schizophrenic. Okay, what do the police say?
About the medical status, that is another aspect of the investigation we're keenly interested in, and we're continuing to investigate that.
Okay, that's it, period. So, they don't think he's crazy. Right, they don't have that. So here's what we've got. That's just the basics. From the body language, from what's being explained, what we do know is that the police have nothing. They have no motive. Now, there's been all of these articles that have popped up, CNN and all of this, and I've shared a few of them where they were like, why does it matter what his motive was? Why does motive matter? Right? So let's talk about, so people understand, why does motive matter? This is just throw this motive here. And I'll just read straight from it. This is why it matters. Means, motive, and opportunity. This is from Wikipedia. In U.S. criminal law, means, motive, and opportunity is a common summation of the three aspects of a crime that must be established before guilt can possibly be determined in a criminal proceeding. Respectively, they refer to the ability of the defendant to commit the crime, the means, the reason the defendant committed the crime, the motive, and whether the defendant had the chance to commit the crime, opportunity. Opportunity is most often disproved by use of an alibi, which can prove the accused was not able to commit the crime, as he or she did not have the correct set of circumstances to commit the crime as it occurred. Some crimes are motiveless, however. However, providing motive can often make it easier to convince a jury of the elements that must be proved for a conviction. So, Christian, what we're talking about here is means, motive, and opportunity. Any prosecutor and any investigator, if they're looking for a suspect, are looking for means, motive, and opportunity. If there's absolutely no motive, you probably have the wrong suspect.
Right.
Now, motive for a particular crime may not be necessary if the person, for instance, had a previous record of committing such crimes. What we were talking about earlier is the idea that if a rape occurs in a neighborhood and on that block lives a registered sex offender with a history of rape, you at least go knock on his door.
Right, exactly.
At the beginning of it all, he's the prime suspect. He's not the prime suspect because you know anything about the means or anything about his opportunity. But you know that this is someone with a history of rape, so they have a motive. Motive is so important. Any investigator will tell you when a murder occurs, 9 times out of 10, the spouse did it. The spouse did it. Mainly because the spouse will generally have all of those things. Means, motive, and certainly opportunity. But motive, the motive could either be money, an insurance payment, something like that.
It could
the
be a
motive
number.
could be, so what are the motives? What are the motives if a typical murder, what are the motives? Money.
Money.
Right? You either want to steal it or whatever. What else? Historically, murder. Love triangle.
Yeah, I was going to say
Right?
anger.
Anger at a romantic thing. Either they're cheating or the killer is cheating with somebody and they want to start a new life with somebody, so they kill this person, right? These are the first things. So, I do believe that plays a role. So now, let's look at inconsistencies. Let's look at now what we know about the killer, Paddock, because he didn't have a previous criminal record. So when we're looking for motive, we're going to look at, was this consistent with the type of behavior that he had? Was he some sort of nut job, or was this consistent? Let's look at this habits.
Before Stephen Paddock unleashed his murderous assault on an innocent concert crowd, he called himself the biggest video poker player in the world, gambling up to $1 million in a single night, overnight, sleeping during the day, prescribed Valium for anxiousness. These are Stephen Paddock's own words as he testified in 2013 in his lawsuit against the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Las Vegas. The suit stems from this moment. Security cameras catching Paddock slipping and falling in a casino walkway. In the 97-page deposition obtained exclusively by CNN, Paddock testifies about that fall and gives us fresh insight into his mind 4 years before the shooting. Paddock moved from Las Vegas casino to casino, at one point staying maybe upwards of 3 weeks out of a month, he said. A high roller, his hotel stays were comped 95% of the time. Bets range from $100 to $1,350 each time I push the button. Speaking of a peak year, asks an attorney, how many dollars are we talking? I average 14 hours a day, 365 days a year, over 200 million coin through. When Paddock says on a given night he'll bet $1 million, an attorney replies, that's a lot of money. No, it's not. Paddock called video poker a game of discipline, at times appearing condescending and sarcastic as he explains to his attorney why he stays sober while gambling. At the stakes I play, you want to have all your wits about you. Paddock's home in Mesquite, Nevada suggests an upper middle class retired life. For easy access to a doctor, Paddock testified he paid a yearly retainer fee to Nevada internist Dr. Stephen Winkler. Paddock says Winkler prescribed him Valium. Why? It's for anxiousness. Rage, aggressiveness, and irritability are among the possible side effects of taking Valium, according to the manufacturer of the drug. The Las Vegas Review-Journal reported that Dr. Winkler prescribed him Valium in June of this year. CNN could not independently confirm that information. Despite all the claims about his high-rolling ways, Paddock testified on the day he fell in the Cosmopolitan, he wore his typical clothing. I always wear black Nike sweatpants that are nylon or polyester. On his feet, black flip-flops that he wore 98% of the time. Life was better before the economic meltdown, he testified, saying Vegas casinos comped less and less, meaning he visited Sin City less. What happened to the economy in 2007, he said? It tanked. Las Vegas went into the gutter with a lot of other things. They quit giving away freebies. It just wasn't worth coming out here as often.
Okay, so what do we know about what do we know about Stephen Paddock? This is him in a sworn deposition, he sued the Cosmo, right? He went to sue the Cosmo for this slip and fall thing.
Right.
He sued them in 2011, and then I think this is from 2013. At that time, Cosmo is owned by MGM. Now it's owned by Blackstone Group, right?
I think it was owned by Deutsche Bank at that time.
At that time, it was Deutsche Bank. Okay, so he's at Cosmo. What do we know about him so far?
A heavy gambler.
Heavy gambler. What else? What else would you say about his personality? I mean, they're talking about. He says, "I always wear black sweats. I always wear these black flip flops. I gamble 14 hours at a time."
Right.
Right. He's being prescribed Valium. Now, this doesn't surprise me. He's a high stakes gambler. I know a few high rollers. One in particular who I know, he comes into town. He usually comes in with an entourage because his shit is super comped at MGM. And so I get to go and hang out with the guys who are there. And one of our friends in particular, his whole job is to keep him calm while he's playing.
Wow.
Because, like he says, you want to keep your wits about you. The anxiety can. So what I'm sure if he would get anxious because he was down and he would need to get back up, he'd take a Valium. Now, lots of people take Valium, and that's not. I've never heard of Valium contributing to somebody going on a premeditated shooting rage. It just doesn't happen. But that's all they've got, right? So let's learn some other things that have not necessarily been reported about this guy. Okay, so we get a better view of him. Let's look at this allergies thing. I found this very interesting. This is from Reuters. Talking about Mary Lou Danley, his girlfriend. She was sympathetic in dealing with Paddock's allergy-driven quirks, Eric Paddock told Reuters. Paddock often wore brown cloth gardening gloves to prevent rashes from contact with cleaning chemical residues, the brother wrote. He was also allergic to many pills and was unable to renew his pilot's license. He had flown his plane since he was a teenager because he could not take the pills needed to reduce his blood pressure, so he's got high blood pressure. At casinos where he was a regular, he was such a valued customer that staff obliged his request to wash his room's carpets with plain water. Quote, the reason Mary Lou looks so plain in that picture they keep posting of her is because for him she would not wear any perfumes or hairsprays or anything with scents in it because it affected him, Eric Paddock wrote, referring to a passport-style photo of Danley that has been widely circulated by news outlets. Okay, so Christian, we've got a little bit of additional information about this guy. Allergy-driven quirks.
Right.
Meaning he wants things very specific.
That's pretty gambler, like hardcore gambler personality trait.
He's got like almost obsessive compulsive disorder.
Obsessive compulsive, yeah.
So people with OCD, they're all about habits, right? They don't leave out of their habits. I find this allergy thing to be important. As we're going to run out of timeline of things that some people don't know that happen that don't make sense with who he is in this case. Other thing about him, let's just go over a little bit about his past that I think is important. Let's throw up this Lockheed thing. Las Vegas shooter this is from Fox Business, worked for predecessor of Lockheed Martin. The man identified as the shooter responsible for killing and wounding hundreds in Las Vegas, Stephen Paddock, previously worked for a company that later became Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor, said the retired Paddock was employed by a predecessor company about 30 years ago. Quote, Stephen Paddock worked for a predecessor company of Lockheed Martin from 1985 until 1988. We're cooperating with authorities to answer questions they may have about Mr. Paddock and his time with the company, Lockheed Martin said in a statement. Lockheed Martin did not disclose which company employed Paddock. The Bethesda, Maryland-based defense contractor was created through the merger of Lockheed Corporation and Martin Marietta in 1995. So he worked for a predecessor, so it could have been Lockheed Corporation, it could have been Martin Marietta. This is an interesting time period, though. So from 1985 to 1988, this is Cold War. This is Cold War. He's working as an accountant for a defense contractor, okay? If you go right now and look at Lockheed jobs and you look at accountants, financial analysts, you're going to need clearance. A great many of those jobs require that you can qualify for top secret clearance. That's important.
Interesting.
That's important. This is an individual, and he only worked for 3 years for Lockheed Martin. But he loved planes. We know he loved guns. Would make sense that he would work for a weapons manufacturer,
Right.
aerospace. So what do we have here? We have an aerospace weapons manufacturer connection. Also, he stops working there. Then where does he go and work? Then where does he work? How many people work as an accountant for Lockheed for only 3 years
Right.
and then don't continue on in that industry? Especially someone who loves to fly. He had a pilot's license until recently, until he couldn't fly because of blood pressure medication, and he owned 2 planes. And he loved guns. And he just, there's nothing else? Where is the employment history for this guy? There's no employment history? He's a retiree. Retired from where? Retired from where? This is an inconsistency. But we do know that the last job that we have for him puts him working for a defense contractor and puts him, it very likely, as someone who has a top secret or some high-level security clearance. Probably at that time top secret because he was working for Lockheed during the Cold War. This is like SR-71 time right there, man, that he's working for them. All right? So, so this is what we know a little bit about him. Now, let's go into, because this is where it starts getting weird, and these are the things that no one's talking about that I find to be the most important inconsistencies in this whole thing. So, here's the guy, okay? We know a little bit about this guy. We know he lives outside of Nevada, retirement community, sleepy retirement community. When he comes to Vegas, he comes and he plays at places where he can get comped rooms. He's very big on the comped rooms. He likes the comped rooms, okay? He's a creature of habit, not straying from his habits. He always wears the same sweatpants. He always wears the same flip-flops.
Compulsive gambler.
Compulsive gambler. Habits. Habits. When an individual who has certain habits breaks those habits, you take notice. That's what was happening just in the weeks preceding this. So let's talk about this story. This was where I started saying, okay, something's fucked up. This is the festival's story. This is from the LA Times. Mandalay Bay gunman spent 2 weeks in Las Vegas before killings and researched outdoor concerts in other large cities, according to the LA Times. This is from the Times. In the first week of August, Paddock reserved rooms at an upscale hotel overlooking Chicago's Grant Park during Lollapalooza, one of the nation's largest outdoor music festivals, a law enforcement source said. The event was headlined by major acts including Chance the Rapper, The Killers, and Muse, and attendees included Sasha and Malia Obama, the daughters of President Obama. It would have been a target similar to the one in Las Vegas, huge crowds packed into an outdoor space beneath tall buildings, but with far more people. Paddock was ultimately a no-show for this reservation in Chicago. Quote, "We can confirm that there was no guest under that name who stayed at our hotel in August during the Lollapalooza Music Festival," said Blackstone Hotel spokeswoman Emmy Carragher. After paying for his girlfriend's trip to visit family in the Philippines, Paddock appears to have been in downtown Las Vegas from September 14th to 28th, according to records reviewed by the representatives of the El Cortez Hotel and Casino, who spoke to the Times on condition of anonymity. The representative said Paddock did not spend the night there or make a reservation, but he was seen in the El Cortez on September 16th, and he obtained a player's card and played slots and blackjack on September 17th, buying in on the latter with $40. Representatives said Paddock won about $300. He only played one time, one of the representatives said, enough to get a meal. The next week, Paddock returned to El Cortez on September 21st and 24th. At some point, he ate 2 meals with his winnings. He cashed out his ticket on September 24th, his sole use of the casino's ATM machines. The timeline overlaps with the 3-day outdoor Life is Beautiful concert, which ran from September 22nd to 24th and which featured similarly high-profile acts as Lollapalooza. Paddock booked an Airbnb in a condo building overlooking the Life is Beautiful music festival, leading investigators to gather video footage from the building to learn more. Quote, "Was he doing pre-surveillance? We don't know yet," Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo said on Wednesday. El Cortez representatives disputed reports that Paddock was kicked out of the property or that the hotel was sold out around the time of Life is Beautiful. Casino representatives said he was not on the radar of management because he did not win or lose a substantial sum. After Paddock was identified, a compliance officer for El Cortez entered his name into their system and determined he had a brief, limited interaction there, representatives said. The hotel leaders then contacted police to share their findings. Okay, Christian, so here's what we have. Paddock, on the 16th of September. So let's first do this. It says he sent his girlfriend to the Philippines, and we'll cover that. So Mary Lou Danley, his girlfriend, she flies from LA to Tokyo to Philippines, and we'll cover those dates. But the important date is that the either leaving date or the arrival date is September 14th,
right,
approximately. So September 16th, this dude's in El Cortez. He didn't have a player's card. He didn't have a player's card for El Cortez. He went to El Cortez on the 16th, he got a player's card, and he played slots and blackjack on September 17th, buying in on the ladder with $40. He played blackjack.
And this is a guy that
plays video poker.
Video poker and up to $1 million a night or something like that, right?
Correct.
High stakes.
So, and he's going to a place where he doesn't get anything comped. He's going downtown to the El Cortez when he's top tier at Caesars and top tier at MGM. Why? This is huge.
Yeah.
Why is this guy, like, for people who don't know, El Cortez is kind of a dumpy little old hotel in an area that was previously completely forgotten and just had homeless people like wandering the streets. It's a dump. It's a dump. The other thing about it is it's dirty. It's gross in there. And this is someone who's like big about the hygiene. Okay, but the story is he's down there. So we have this story about the Ogden. But let's first, so this is strange. So let's cover this little section because I believe something's happening, and I believe by the end of this, you'll agree. I think that everybody can figure out what the hell is happening here. So he booked some hotels in Chicago. Let's examine this Chicago story. So let's go Chicago. This is when it starts. This is when the story begins. Okay. This is from TMZ. Stephen Paddock had set his sights on Lollapalooza in Chicago and even booked 2 rooms in a hotel that overlooked a massive outdoor venue, TMZ has learned. Then they have a picture actually off the computer. Check out this pic of a computer screen at the Blackstone Hotel in Chicago, located across the street from the venue Grant Park, where 400,000 people, including Malia Obama, squeezed in over 4 days to watch big musical acts. Paddock booked 1 room for August 1st, 2017, 2 days before the August 3rd kickoff. Paddock then booked a second room for an August 3rd arrival. Both rooms had an August 6th checkout date. That's when Lollapalooza ended. The hotel directly overlooked the main stage as well as several adjoining stages. It also overlooks the main entrance and exit, where thousands of people file through, and the hotel had a bird's eye view of the crowd. We're told Paddock specifically requested both rooms be a view room, which only face Grant Park, where the concert was being held. And here's the scariest part. It's difficult, if not impossible, to flee because of Lake Michigan. Sources tell Paddock had never booked a room at the hotel before, nor had his girlfriend. So, Christian, don't get off this because the timeline's very important here. So he calls up, and you see that on the 23rd of July, okay, he calls up and he books a room for August 1st through August 6th. Okay? He calls up on the 23rd.
Yeah.
4 days later, on the 27th, he calls up and he books a room for August 3rd through 6th, meaning later check-in, but both rooms overlap. Now, let's forget about a shooter, okay?
Right.
Forget about a shooter. Leave this up so people can see it. We'll talk this through. Forget about a shooter. You work at a hotel, right? I actually have been a front desk clerk before. Front desk clerk, you know the dates of Lollapalooza when they're coming.
Right.
Guy calls up. He says, okay, I want a room from the 1st through the 6th, and I want it to overlook Grant Park. Mm-hmm. What do you think he's there for? Lollapalooza, right?
Lollapalooza, yeah.
He wants,
Right.
specifically, during the time of Lollapalooza, he wants to overlook it.
Uh-huh.
He's going to get there a few days early, check out the city, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then he calls 4 days later, and he says, hey, I've already got a room, but I want to get a second room. But I only want it for the 3rd through the 6th. Now, the 3rd is the opening day of Lollapalooza. He wants both rooms. Why is he getting the second room? It's not a shooter.
Right.
Why is he getting the second room? What would be your first inclination?
Girlfriend or friends?
Friends, right? It's a party.
Yeah.
He's traveling with a party of people. They're all going to Lollapalooza. Now, how I read this? Now, he didn't have friends. He didn't have friends.
Right.
We know this. He did not have friends. And there's no fucking gambling there. This dude's a compulsive gambler. There's no gambling there. So, this is interesting. This is a break in a pattern. Who are these friends? And where did they come from? Now, other thing about it. He's a 64-year-old man. Okay? Compulsive gambler. Does all of this. What do you think, how likely do you think it is he wanted to go and check out Chance the Rapper?
Seriously. Slim to none.
Slim to none. But yet he specifically wants, we know he's there for Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
He's booking it for Lollapalooza, clearly. He doesn't want to. What would make a 64-year-old man book rooms during Lollapalooza? What would make him do that?
If he was... Well, I would say if he was planning something. If he was...
Take out
the shooter.
Take out the shooting. A shooting never happened here. This is before you know a shooting. You see this happening. What would make a 64-year-old man decide to book hotel rooms for a music festival that a whole bunch of young people are going to? What would motivate him to do that?
I don't know.
Really? Well, I think there's a lot of listeners out there that know. And I think that I know as well. Okay? And you're going to see why this adds up with his behavior. Because he had a new young girlfriend.
Oh, I see. Okay.
He had a new young girlfriend who said, oh, I really love music festivals. I'd love to go to Lollapalooza in Chicago.
Gotcha.
And he says, I booked guess what? I booked us a hotel room. We're going to go to Lollapalooza. Oh my God, we're going to Lollapalooza. We're going to Lollapalooza. Can my friends come? Oh, are you going to go? I don't want you to have to go with me.
Gotcha.
Can my friends come?
That makes sense.
Could you? Oh, do you think you could book a room for my friends? Okay, yeah, I can do that. Well, yeah, that way they can take care of me, and you can be looking down on me, and like you can see me, and I can wave to you from the hotel room. You can check on me. But he never shows up to Lollapalooza, right? But then a month later, let's go with this. Here's another weird thing. Let's go with this long term. This is another thing nobody's talking about, nobody's reporting upon. This is from the Las Vegas Sun. Las Vegas gunmen had sought long-term lease at Ogden. The Route 91 Harvest Festival gunmen began the process of obtaining a long-term rental unit at a downtown high-rise condo building weeks before the Life is Beautiful festival, according to a letter sent to the Ogden residents by its homeowners association. In the letter sent Thursday, it's revealed that an outside real estate agent showed Stephen Paddock a privately owned unit inside the 21-story residential building on September 8th, and he later completed a rental application. The real estate agent provided Paddock with a one-year lease agreement, but the gunman never responded to receiving it. They do not know why. It previously has been reported that Paddock rented and stayed in multiple units over several days before and during Life is Beautiful, which ran September 22nd through 24th, and drew an attendance of 137,000 people over 3 days. Sheriff Joe Lombardo said those units were acquired through Airbnb, a popular web platform that allows people to rent out their rooms or entire residences. So, Christian, again, here we go. Here's this guy, September 8th. So this is the week before his girlfriend leaves. This is the week before he's in El Cortez, the week before he's spotted otherwise downtown. He has a real estate agent show him a condo for lease on a long-term lease in the Ogden. Now, this is a 64-year-old man who lives, owns a house in Mesquite, and when he comes to Vegas, has his rooms comped. Before he had said he would stay 5 nights out of a week in a comped hotel room. What would make a 64-year-old man go and try to lease a condo at the Ogden, which is fucking party central, where there's kids passing by you all day, every day, puking in the elevators. It's below it is actual literal nightclubs. What would make a 64-year-old man want to take out a year-long lease on an apartment at the Ogden? Go.
New girlfriend.
Yes. That one's clear.
Yeah.
Is it not?
Yeah. Yep.
That one is so obvious. Now, then let's go to the next. Let's look at this Ogden story. So, this is about his time at the Ogden, all right? Paddock rented a room overlooking the Life is Beautiful festival in downtown Las Vegas a week earlier, Lombardo said. Lombardo said Paddock used room-sharing site Airbnb to rent a room at the Ogden during the festival, which ran from September 22nd to 24th. He said investigators had not yet determined why Paddock rented the room or whether he was engaged in pre-surveillance of the music and art event. Quote, "We don't know yet," he said of Paddock's presence in the condominium complex. Now here's what's important, because this is a pattern. So, what do you remember about his booking pattern in Chicago? What do we know? He booked rooms. Oh no, go back to it. Because people will want to see this. In Chicago, we know that he booked multiple rooms and that the dates were not all the same across the rooms. Here's where it gets, oh no, now this is covered up. We're going to have to wait for this to, wait for it to go away. Don't go back to us. Okay. Don't go back to us. So let's see when this goes away. So what we would expect, if my theory is right, that he had a new girlfriend who said she liked music festivals and wanted to go with her friends, but for some reason they couldn't go to Chicago. This is Las Vegas Review-Journal. According to the law enforcement source, Paddock tried to get a room at El Cortez, but it was sold out. So he rented 3 rooms at the Ogden, 150 Las Vegas Boulevard North. One room was booked between September 17th and 22nd. A second room was booked from September 21st to 23rd. And the third, September 24th to 28th. So basically what you have is you've got these 3 rooms, right? That 2 of them overlap, September 17th through 22nd. Now here's the thing. This thing doesn't even start till the 22nd. So there's 5 days that he's renting a room where Life is Beautiful will not even be there. Then he books a second room, 21st through 23rd. Okay? That is during the festival. Then he books a third room that goes September 24th through 28th. Again, 4 days, no festival. Now, if you're going to shoot up a festival, the 21st through 23rd makes sense.
Right.
The other 2 make no sense. But if you're putting your girlfriend up, your new girlfriend up in a place, that makes sense. Especially if she doesn't necessarily live in town. She's coming in from out of town. This is how you're connecting with her. It also makes sense of why he would go down to the El Cortez to gamble. Killing time. He's killing time. He's going to the closest. The El Cortez, for people who don't know, is next door to the Ogden. You walk out of the Ogden, you walk across the street, you're inside the El Cortez.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Right? New girlfriend.
Yeah.
Now, also reports when he's in Mandalay Bay, these reports of him being with a mystery woman. You can go back to us now. These reports of him being with a mystery woman.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, you talk about 9 times out of 10 when someone gets murdered, the spouse did it, and we said cheating is a possible motivation. Now, let's talk about the prospective spouse, because there are some interesting things about her as well that are some inconsistencies.
Mm-hmm.
This is Mary Lou Danley. Let's listen to the official story, which is the statement. Now, mind you, one thing that we said is no one has seen Mary Lou Danley.
Right.
You've seen pictures from her Facebook page.
And on Google and all that stuff.
But you've never seen a video of her.
No.
She's never given an interview.
Mm-hmm.
You've never talked to anybody who saw her on any of the airplanes she was traveling on. Nothing. As a matter of fact, the gate agents didn't even see her, because supposedly when she got to LAX, the FBI grabbed her and took her out another exit.
Right.
To try to stay away from the crowds or whatever. Okay. Let's go with the statement. This is all we have. A statement read by her lawyer. Go ahead, this is a statement.
I have a statement to read from my client, Mary Lou Danley. I am devastated by the deaths and injuries that have occurred, and my prayers go out to the victims and their families, and all those who have been hurt by these awful events. I have faith in God, and I will continue to pray for everyone who has been harmed or hurt. I am a mother and a grandmother, and my heart breaks for all who have lost loved ones. I knew Stephen Paddock as a kind, caring, quiet man. I loved him and hoped for a quiet future together with him. He never said anything to me or took any action that I was aware of that I understood in any way to be a warning that something horrible like this was going to happen. A little more than 2 weeks ago, Stephen told me he'd found a cheap ticket for me to the Philippines, and that he wanted me to take a trip home to see my family. Like all Filipinos abroad, I was excited to go home and see family and friends. While there, he wired me money, which he said was for me to buy a house for me and my family. I was grateful, but honestly, I was worried that first, the unexpected trip home, and then the money was a way of breaking up with me. It never occurred to me in any way whatsoever that he was planning violence against anyone. I have not made a statement until now because I have been cooperating with the authorities, and I voluntarily flew back to America because I know that the FBI and Las Vegas Police Department wanted to talk to me, and I want to talk to them. I will cooperate fully with their investigation. Anything I can do to help ease suffering and help in any way, I will do. Please respect my privacy and my family's privacy. Thank you.
Okay, but the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, no matter how bad they want to talk to her, have not talked to her.
Have not.
No one has talked to her except for the FBI who took her off the plane. Now, if we are to take Mary Lou Danley at her word, she was under the impression that she was getting broken up with.
Right.
Now, that doesn't come out of the blue. That doesn't come out of the blue that someone thinks they're getting broken up with. Also, all we know about this ticket is that Mary Lou Danley, in a statement, if that's Mary Lou Danley who wrote the statement, we don't even know that that's what she said. Claims he bought the ticket. He found a ticket for her, bought it for her, and said you should go. Found a cheap ticket and said you should go. This is a guy who's a multi-millionaire who he cares about finding a cheap ticket to the Philippines?
Right, exactly.
Found a cheap ticket and you should go. Then he wires her $100,000 when she's in the Philippines. Wires her $100,000. So you live with somebody, you want to give them $100,000, you put them on a plane, and then you wait to wire it to them in the Philippines.
What the fuck?
Does this woman not have a fucking bank account? Wires her $100,000. Now, there's some weird things about Mary Lou Danley, so let's look at this. Let's look at her trip timeline here. So she arrived in Manila on September 15th. Remember, the 14th is when this dude is first spotted downtown. More than 2 weeks before the mass shooting in Las Vegas, then flew to Hong Kong on September 22nd and returned to Manila on September 25th. She was there until she flew to LAX on Tuesday night, according to Philippine immigration officials who spoke on condition of anonymity. Those 2 dates. So she flies to Manila, and then she flies to Hong Kong on the 22nd through the 25th. Well, isn't that convenient that that's exactly the same dates as the Life is Beautiful festival?
Right.
Isn't that weird? I mean, I'm sure it's just coincidence. I'm sure it's just coincidence that at the time that Life is Beautiful is going on, that she happens to be in Hong Kong, not Manila. Okay, so let's look at that. Let's look at this graphic so that you can see basically how this looks. So she gets to Tokyo, Japan. Then she flies from Tokyo to Manila. She gets to Manila on the 15th. Then she goes from Manila to Hong Kong on the 22nd, flies back on the 25th, and then October 3rd, she's back in the U.S. Okay, fine. So now let's talk about what's interesting about this. On her return, let's look at this return. This is her return document. Mary Lou Danley. This is the picture ID of Mary Lou Danley, who arrived in the United States Tuesday, October 3rd. A Philippine Bureau of Immigration officials told ABS-CBN that Danley had flown from Manila on September 22nd to Hong Kong for a 4-day trip and returned to Manila from Hong Kong on September 25th via Cebu Pacific flight. There's the number, using an Australian passport. On Tuesday, ABC News reported Danley was en route to the U.S. within 24 hours, but did not specify from which country she was coming. Her public profile describes her as gambling and casino professional, and has resided in Reno, Nevada during the last 20 years, which could also make her either a U.S. immigrant or a U.S. citizen. And you see that this is an Australian passport, a photo of an Australian passport that she's using to travel. Wow. So come back to us, Christian. This should raise a lot of questions.
Yeah.
This woman's traveling on an Australian passport. What do we know about this? So she's born in Philippines, but she has an Australian passport, and she lives and has been living in the U.S. For 20 some odd years. This is normal. This is normal. I looked at this and I said, traveling on an Australian passport.
That's fucking weird.
Traveling on an Australian passport. So is she an Australian citizen? And if so, she's just here on a green card. But she was married to an American. Mm-hmm. So it turns out she was married to an Australian first. That's how she got her Australian citizenship. Then she came to the States. She married the guy Danley, Gary Danley. She was married to him for 15 years. So I said, wow, she's married to him for 15 years. And she didn't get a U.S. citizenship. But then I was like, oh, but she couldn't have had both. So maybe she is an Australian citizen.
Yeah, that's weird.
Let's go to dual citizen. Got it? Dual citizen?
Yeah, I see it.
This is from the Australian Immigration Bureau. Dual citizenship. It is possible to hold citizenship for 2 or more countries if the law of those countries allow. This is known as dual or multiple citizenship. People can become dual citizens automatically or after being granted citizenship of another country. For example, an Australian citizen may automatically gain citizenship of another country through marriage, while a permanent resident of Australia may become a dual citizen by becoming an Australian citizen. Prior to 4th of April 2002, Australian citizens who became citizens of another country lost their Australian citizenship automatically. So, Christian, what do you how likely do you think it is that it's after 2002, this law passes, she can become a dual citizen, she's been married to an American for the requisite amount of time, which is how long? Let's go with naturalize here, the very next one. Naturalization for spouses. In general, you may qualify for naturalization if you have been a permanent resident, green card holder for at least 3 years, have been living in marital union with the same U.S. citizen spouse during such a time, meet all other eligibility requirements under this section. So, we've got, Christian, come on back to us, we've got the most likely scenario we've got someone who's a dual citizen with 2 passports.
Mm-hmm.
2 passports. Traveling on an Australian passport. 2 passports. Remember that.
Key.
Is that normal?
No.
Is it normal for someone born in Philippines to have dual citizenship in Australia and the United States? Is that normal?
Not whatsoever.
No. So she's already kind of an abnormal person.
Mm-hmm.
And just so happens to be out of the country when her boyfriend goes on a crazy shooting spree that no one can explain the motive. And during that time, just so happens that he wires her $100,000. That's not suspicious. That's not fucking suspicious at all. So what else do we know about her? This is one thing that nobody had really looked into. So her profile says that she is a gambling and casino professional, right? Let's go with this jobs thing. So this is about how they met. Eventually around this is from CNN, just a piece of an article. Eventually around 2012, Paddock began spending more time in Reno and sticking to his pattern, began buying property there. Mm-hmm. He also found a girlfriend, although it's not clear how they met. Mary Lou Danley's job may have been the connection. An Australian citizen and former airline hostess and Avon sales representative, she worked for a time as a hostess to high-limit gamblers at Club Paradise at the Atlantis Casino Resort Spa. Now, Christian, it's been reported that that is how they met, that he was a high roller, she was a hostess to high-limit gamblers at Club Paradise. Right. That's where he was. Come back to us, dude. What I found interesting when I saw that is I was like, former airline hostess?
Yeah.
What do we know about this? The only place that this... Oh, there you go. Screw that in. The only place that this came up, that I found this, and I think that this is the original source for this, go to this Reno thing. Reno?
Job 2?
No, Reno. It's way above that.
Oh, there we go.
Got it. So this is from the San Jose Mercury News. And this is a little bit about their situation in Reno. According to court records, Danley had been living in Nevada and appears to have been living with Paddock as early as August 2013, while she was still married to another man named Gary Danley. Gary and Mary Lou Danley were married in Las Vegas in 1990. According to court records, they jointly filed for divorce on February 25th, 2015, and the divorce was finalized the next day. During her divorce, Mary Lou Danley listed a downtown Reno apartment as her address. Property records show the apartment was owned by shooting suspect Stephen Paddock. So hold on. Here we have Stephen Paddock putting his girlfriend up in an apartment. Pattern. All right. At one point, this is interesting. At one point, Danley worked for an airline based out of the Bay Area, said a longtime neighbor in Reno where Danley and Paddock lived together in a retirement community. She later worked for Avon, the cosmetic sales company, and tried to sell their products to other residents, Elizabeth Tye said. Danley traveled all the time, and when she was at the home she shared with Paddock in a retirement community in Reno, it was never for very long. Tye said Danley would show up every 3 or 4 months and stay for no more than 10 days. So leave this on, Christian. This is important. 2012, Paddock shows up in Reno. From August 2013, this woman is living with Stephen Paddock. Okay? They meet when she's a casino host. The weirdest thing about this is, while they're living together, a neighbor in Reno says she starts working for an airline based out of the Bay Area. Now, she's got a LinkedIn profile, doesn't list her working for an airline. She's got a Facebook, doesn't list her as working for an airline. She's got no Facebook pictures of her with her airline friends. She's got none of that. This again is something very, very strange. So, also the fact that she's leaving, all right? She's not working for Avon when she's gone for 3 to 4 months and then only back for 10 days at a time. Now, if she's leaving for 3 to 4 months, she's not she's not in Reno. She's not working at the Atlantis. Now, has she stopped working altogether? She's not working for fucking Avon, being gone for 3 to 4 months.
Nope.
So, the only other job that the neighbor knows, she's working for an airline that she has never mentioned in anything, and an airline that supposedly is based out of the Bay Area. Okay? So, as I said last week, the key for me in this whole thing was Janet Air. Janet Air is an airline. Now, Janet Air is based out of Las Vegas. Okay, that's fine. Or is it, right? Or is it? So let's go, where are we? Employment, let's go Reno. Is this Reno?
We're on Reno right now.
So let's go properties. To get a timeline, because this is interesting. So, this is from Time Money. This is about Paddock's properties and the timeline of him buying them. So he lived with his girlfriend in an upscale 55-plus retirement community in Mesquite, about 80 miles from Las Vegas. He bought the 2018 square foot home in 2015 for $369,000, according to the Review Journal. Actually, what it says in the Review Journal is he bought this home in January of 2015 in Las Vegas. Mary Lou Danley filed for and received a divorce in February of 2015. He also paid $238,000 in 2013 for a home in the Sierra Canyon by Del Webb community in Reno, where properties now list for $300,000 to $600,000. That was where he lived with Danley. In addition, the Reno Gazette-Journal reported that Paddock owned a condo at the Montage in downtown Reno before selling it in December 2016. That condo is the apartment that Mary Lou Danley was listing. Okay, so what we have here is a decision being made to move sticks in 2015 to move down to Las Vegas from Reno. He owns 2 properties in Reno. A decision is made to move down. He buys a house in January. In February, Mary Lou Danley files, you can come back to us. In February, Mary Lou Danley files for divorce. What does this tell me? What this tells me is this woman, Mary Lou Danley, is looking for a bigger commitment.
Yeah.
She says, we need to be living together. Right? I don't want to be spending this time of us apart. Let's spend time together. And in spending time together, he decides to move to Las Vegas, right outside Las Vegas. Now, that must mean that where Mary Lou Danley had been those 3 or 4 months was down in Las Vegas.
Right.
Doing what? Working what job? Was she working at a casino? Absolutely not. How do we know that? Nobody's come forward and said they fucking worked with her. What's she doing in Vegas? What's Mary Lou Danley doing in Vegas? And what's up with this airline that she's working for that's based out of the Bay Area? So let's look at, why don't you throw up Janet Op? This is when we start getting into it. I mentioned Janet Air before. Janet Air is 1 block away from where the shooting happened. This is from Wikipedia. This is their operation section. Due to the airline's secretive nature, little is known about its organization. It is operated for the U.S. Air Force by infrastructure and defense contractor ACOM through ACOM's acquisition in 2014 of URS Corporation, which acquired EG&G Technical Services in 2012 as derived from URS's history of providing the service to the Air Force and job openings published by URS. For example, in 2010, URS announced it would be hiring Boeing 737 flight attendants to be based in Las Vegas, requiring applicants to undergo a single-scope background investigation in order to be able to obtain a top-secret security clearance. So let's first say, what is a single-scope background investigation? So go single-scope. So it's a type of security clearance required for top-secret access. So they look at they check you through your national agencies, they check your birth, they do a subject interview, they check who you live with, all of these things. Citizenship must be a U.S. citizen. Independent verification of citizenship received directly from the appropriate registration authority. Which would make sense why the story needs to stay that she's an Australian citizen if she's been working for Janet Air, which also, as a dual citizen and someone with a plausible deniability of citizenship, makes her a good potential candidate. In addition, probably doesn't hurt that you're living with somebody who had previously had security clearance because he'd been cleared by Lockheed Martin. We'll talk about that a little more. Let's look at what one of these this job opening for flight attendants. There was one hidden way back that someone had posted on their blog from 2010, a flight attendant blog. Here it is. EGG, AK Janet, Las Vegas. Company name, URS Corporation. Position, B737 flight attendant. Full-time, regular hire. High school graduate, must present a neat professional appearance. Must pass company-operated jet aircraft emergency training and initial flight attendant training and maintain currency as flight attendant. Must be able to qualify for and maintain a top secret security clearance. Possess a valid current state driver's license. Let's go next. Let's say you want to apply. Address, headquarters, 600 Montgomery Street, 26th floor, San Francisco, California. So Christian, what we have here is, we have an airline based in Las Vegas. No, an airline headquartered in the Bay Area, just as was said by the neighbor, that flies out of Las Vegas. That flies out of the top secret location 1 block away from the shooting. With a woman who we don't know where the fuck she was working, but clearly was down in Las Vegas, who is a dual citizen, who there is questionable shit around this guy, who's with the guy who used to work for Lockheed, and we don't really know for how long, and we don't know what security clearance he had, and it's even conceivable that he still had some friends, because when you get a new girlfriend, right, he meets this woman, she's working at Atlantis Casino in Reno. He's trying to show off for her. She starts living with him. I don't want you working in that casino anymore. I'll call a few friends. I bet I know a job you could get. Calls up his Lockheed guys. Oh yeah, they've got some flight attendants. That we fly out to the testing range, Janet Air. And then, she's working for them. Okay, so here we go. Moving forward. So let's look. We'll look at URS and ACOM. So these are the companies. As you see, their headquarters, Transamerica Pyramid, San Francisco, California. They were acquired by ACOM. Let's go to ACOM. ACOM is who runs Janet Air. All right. Now, let's talk about... So now, Christian, we've developed this out. This is the theory. You can come back to us. So this is the background. This is now, again, I'm only telling a story. I'm only telling a story with pieces that fit.
Right.
Now, I said from the beginning that Janet Air was a key. Before I knew anything about Mary Lou Danley. Before I knew anything about Stephen Paddock. Before I knew anything, Janet Air is a key.
Just off of the principle that you talked about earlier.
If a crime occurs and there's somebody... So, if there's... Like I said, if there's a rapist, if a rape occurs in a neighborhood and a rapist lives down the block, you knock on his door.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
if a whole bunch of people get killed by military weapons, now these are military, automatic, can't be got by civilians. A whole bunch of people get killed with military weapons under mysterious circumstances, and on that block there is a top secret military weapons testing facility. You at least knock on the door. But the only problem is you can't knock on the door. You can't knock on the door, Janet Air. And let's show people so that they understand just exactly, because see, I knew this because I used that road.
Right.
Not only have I been right next to Janet Air because I've been to Ernie Moody's hangar and I've seen these planes up close. I use that road. Like, it's hard to understand just how close we're talking about. I'm going to try to show it.
Right.
Because once you know how close it is, you're like, oh shit. Okay? So let's go map. This is the map. What you see is Mandalay Bay on the left-hand side. You see Janet Air on the right-hand side. And sort of triangle in between. So you've got this block in the middle, then it's Janet Air. And at the top, middle area, you see where the festival was taking place. Now, to show you just exactly why Janet Air makes sense to me in this case, throw up this trajectory. What I did was I took a line. I drew a line from Stephen Paddock's room to the center, right dead in front of the stage. Then I took that same line, same length, same angle, and I just flipped it horizontally, attached it to itself.
Wow.
And where does it land you? Literally at the doorstep of Janet Air. It lands you on their parking lot. That's just coincidence?
That's crazy.
Because, here's one thing. That location and room was chosen. Could have chose Tropicana, could have chose Luxor. As a matter of fact, Luxor is actually closer. Could have chose Tropicana, could have chose Luxor. Didn't. Chose Mandalay Bay. Why? Why? So that people can get an idea. Go to this from stage. This is, I went to Google Maps. This is looking, you're basically standing just right to the right of the stage. You're standing in the road. The stage almost abuts the road. You're looking straight forward. If you look down that road, to the right of those fuel tanks is the Janet Air parking lot. Mm-hmm. Now let's look at it looking from Janet Air, so from the lot. You can see, this is you standing basically on the Janet Air parking lot corner. Looking, you can, that little black line that you see going there, that's the fence of the place. You can shout. You can shout to the venue.
Crazy.
From the parking lot of Janet Air. Now, let's see what a drone view looks like. This is a drone. Now, before I had said that I believe that the drones moved around. I don't believe that anymore. I believe that these drones were, for the most part, stationary over the Janet Air parking lot. Look at what this view looks like. Mm-hmm. This is a drone hovering above the Janet Air parking lot. Look at that shot. Look at that shot.
Wow.
This is directly over the Janet Air parking lot. So people are like, that drone doesn't exist. That drone doesn't exist, and even this doesn't even make sense. We're going to show a timeline. Show this check here. Now you see the Hebrew in the background, and you see that this big check says Duke, $100,000. Big old check. Now, what is this check for? Let's go to award. This is from Geek Time, and this is the only article about this, and it's very, very important. Where is it? Let me get it here. Oh, do I not have it? This is a U.S. Defense Department comes to Tel Aviv looking for military innovation. Here we go. Very important. This is from June 7th, 2016, last year. After months of entries and a long selection process, Israeli defense and security startups gathered on Monday for the now annual Combating Terrorism Technology Conference held next to the Tel Aviv University campus. Sponsored by the United States Defense Department's Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office, Israel's Ministry of Defense Directorate of Defense Research and Development, and the MIT Enterprise Forum of Israel, the competition sought out the most innovative technologies for deployment with the U.S. security and military forces. As with last year's event, a $100,000 prize was hanging in the balance for the security-related startup with the winning ideas. Additionally, this year, a new mobile apps category was added with another $100,000 for the taking. Over 120 different startups sent entries, which were reviewed by panels of experts in different fields that could sort through the fray of different technologies, ranging from hardware, personnel tracking, computer vision and image mapping, cybersecurity, and many others. In the end, Gideon Miller of the MIT Enterprise Forum, who helped make this day happen, told Geek Time that 10 companies made it into the general competition while another 9 came to the mobile section. That part's important. These entries were reviewed by panels of experts in different fields that could sort through the technologies, meaning the complete breakdown of these technologies were given to the Department of Defense. They went through with a fine-tooth comb to see which ones were good, and here's from the article again. At the end of the day, Duke Robotics System, which developed a stabilization system that allows for drones of all sorts to carry different forms of peripheral add-ons, including firearms, won first place and a nice chunk of change in their pockets. The checks and certificates were presented to the participants by U.S. Ambassador Daniel Shapiro. That guy holding the other side of that check is the U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Daniel Shapiro, who spoke about the importance of mutual work on developing important technologies for defense, including the detection of tunnels from the Gaza Strip, interception of rockets like with the Iron Dome system, and other advances in technology that benefit both Israeli and American forces. The ambassador told the crowd that he was impressed by the range of ideas that are making the world a safer place. In attendance of the event were this is Combating Terrorism Office, Chief of Staff Adam Tarsi, and the MIT chief scientist Dov Oster, who spoke to the audience about their impressions of this year's crop of companies. This is important. The guy from the Department of Defense, Tarsi, this is what he says. Tarsi, who's been coming to Israel for over a decade, seeking out great technologies to integrate into the U.S. defense base, told Geek Time that, quote, the overall level of the contestants rose dramatically this year. There were a couple of really good ones last year and some that needed a lot of work. This year there was a much more polish, and the general level of applicability and innovation was 2 steps of where it was last year. So we went from having, on a scale of 1 to 10, a lot of 3s, 4s, and 5s, to having 7s and 8s, and things that we really had to struggle with to get first and second place. With the stiff competition of great startups came some difficult decisions, Tarsi says, that in choosing their winner, they wanted to see real innovation. Quote, we're looking for things that are really novel, but it's hard to find bolts of lightning. Not everything is coming out of nowhere and game-changing technology, he said to Geek Time. Unlike other sorts of tech investors that can play a long game on an interesting idea, Tarsi is representing the American security establishment and is pressed to find solutions that will directly address the needs of the people in the field. This is important. Quote, we looked at how can I see an operator using this technology in the near future, he explains, pointing to Duke as an example of the types of solutions that appeal to him. It was ready to go in an application that we thought that our tactical users, our guys in the field, would be able to utilize in the near term, explains Tarsi. So, Christian, what we have is last year, the technology that enables a drone, and we'll show what this technology is. Go ahead and put up gimbal. This is the technology. It's basically a system that attaches to a drone, that allows small arms to be fired. And because the problem would be that the drones would fire, you can come back to us, the drones would fire these small arms, and it would throw the drone all out of whack, yeah. Right? So this gimbal allows for that, and it stabilizes, and then the drone fixes itself. Now, there's some issues with this, okay? And we see, interestingly, while all of this is happening, weirdly enough, in the same whole space, this goes from basically unknown to these guys putting it out in public. And this should give people a lot of pause. Do this promo bit. Oh, do we have it?
Yeah.
Can now be deployed to places human soldiers can't reach or simply shouldn't have to go. TCAT is able to adjust for the right place and time. The TCAT robot is designed to identify, target, and engage in real-life scenarios. TCAT takes the full recoil of the weapon discharge, compensates for its force, and quickly readjusts to stay on target and in the fight. The Defense Department chose Duke as winner of the 2016 Terror Combat Competition. The company is in the process of implementing orders from the Israeli forces. Every year in the U.S., more than $150 billion is spent in R&D and acquisition of better solutions to secure our troops. The total global aerial drone market by itself is expected to reach $10 billion in 2017. Over the next several years, the military robotic and drone sector will continue to lead all other sectors in drone spending. Invest in Duke Robotics. TCAD, the robot that will transform the way conflicts are being solved.
Okay, you can come back to us.
Duke. Nope.
Okay, so here's the deal. These guys start going after fundraising. Now, the other thing about that I found interesting about this, as I was looking at this, and a piece that stood out to me and why I said, it's not Duke. It's not these guys.
No.
It's not this thing. The reason why, as I looked further, their gimbal that they created can only do semi-automatic.
I see.
It can't stabilize enough for automatic. It can only do semi-automatic.
But the technology is there.
Well, the Defense Department has had all of their technical specs of what theirs does since June of 2016. They found it to be so valuable, they cut these guys a $100,000 check. Right? They talked about, this is the type of technology that we could use right now. Right fucking now, it's ready to go. Representative of the Department of Defense says, it's ready to go. We're paying these guys. So, this, as a tech guy, I know what this is. But now these guys are going for funding. So check out, let's just throw up this TechCrunch thing. Because I think that is key. So, what do we got? A defense company put a machine gun on a drone. I'll just do an important part from this. So, Duke is saying that they're currently in testing with the Israeli army and that they are also doing a sort of online crowd sale for investment, which is why they produce such a titillating video. Given the current state of drone technology, a product like this would be dangerous for use in real situations, but with a bit of engineering and improvement, you could have something that could launch from a distant location, move in from the kill, and then fly back. It could also, like so many drones on the market, explode when it hits a tree. So take TCAD with a grain of salt. This is an investment strategy, not a final product, and I suspect if it were that easy to stick a gun onto a drone, we'd have something smaller than the Predator flying around. So TechCrunch is like, their product is almost ready. It's almost ready. So what do I see? What I see is this was taken by the Department of Defense. This was taken out. The technology was taken out to the testing range. They gave it to their engineers. They said, can you take this and improve it so it can do automatic weapons? They've been doing that for the last year. Now, it would make sense that they were doing it at Area 51 and the other proving grounds, which is where Janet Air flies to every day. That would make sense because that's where they would test this, because that's where they test secret aircraft. That is the location. So then they get it working and they cut these dudes loose. They cut Duke Robotics loose. They're like, no, we're good. We're not really interested in your technology anymore. Thanks. We don't need you now. And that's why these guys are going out trying to get funding. And the timing is perfect because they would be getting their funding together right around the time that their phone calls stopped getting returned, which would be right around the time that they started testing this. First on targets, small targets, things in the proving ground, whatever. I'm going to blow through some of this other stuff, okay? And I'm going to go straight to, I'm going to tell you there were reports, lots of reports. You can go check it out. I've got a thing. Savage, people were sending me stuff and I wanted to play it, but we don't have a ton of time on this, right?
Yeah.
Lots of reports of shots coming from the opposite direction.
Right.
Lots.
This doesn't make sense.
Lots.
Although I did speak to a police officer and he said that in training, he said you think the bullets would ricochet and bounce up, but what they do is they bounce and then they go across the floor horizontally about a foot to 3 feet off the floor. So he said, like, whenever we're in training, or if we're in a situation and there's a wall behind us, they say back away from the wall at least 5 feet because all the shooter has to do is shoot the wall and it'll skim across the wall. Well,
yeah, but what people are saying is that they're standing like this.
Yeah.
And that they're hit from this side.
Right, okay, gotcha.
So now, is that potentially a ricochet? Sure, it's potentially a ricochet. But then, if people are getting hit from this side, is that not potentially also a ricochet?
Right.
Right? We've got bullets potentially coming from every direction. Where there's this other story, though, and this is what I want to end with, because I think that this puts the nail in the coffin that this is what was happening. And it's this tank story. Go ahead and throw up this tank story. So this is Commissioner calls for security review of jet fuel tanks after Las Vegas Strip shooting. Clark County Commissioner Chris Guillen, I can't even say her name, said Thursday she would seek a security review of the jet fuel tanks targeted Sunday by Las Vegas Strip mass murderer Stephen Paddock. The commission's vice chair said, and a possible candidate for governor next year, made her comments in the wake of a Wednesday Review Journal report that Paddock used his Mandalay Bay hotel room to fire bullets at the circular tanks. So One round penetrated tank 202, which was partially filled with jet fuel, the airline statement said. The second round was found lodged within the same tank's outer steel shell and did not penetrate. This tank was subsequently evaluated by experts who found no evidence of smoke nor fire. Jones said the tank is being drained and will be re-inspected and repaired. A knowledgeable source said this week that both of the bullets struck near the top of the tank. So what's interesting about this story, I had posted it also on Twitter, that they had crews out there. They had cordoned it off. The FBI... I don't know if it's in this one. Here. Several airplane hangars belonging to prominent corporations are near the tanks, which sit on property owned by the airport. The tanks are operated by Swissport Fueling, the company that runs the jet fuel operations for the airport. The Review Journal reported Wednesday that FBI agents had inspected the tanks and took measurements of the line of fire from Mandalay Bay. A team of forensics experts were brought to Las Vegas from FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. So they brought a team of forensic experts from Washington, D.C. to inspect these tanks, and they're inspecting the line of fire. The FBI agents are inspecting a line of fire to Mandalay Bay for 2 holes in the tanks. I don't think that's what's happening at all. Here's what I think is happening. Now, one, they want to cordon off the area that's literally the closest thing to Janet Air, because they're examining trajectory, and they're saying bullets are coming. That's what they're examining. They're examining not the line of fire from Mandalay Bay, the line of fire to the people from the highest point. They're thinking, it looks like a sniper was on top of these things because we've got trajectory. As we do the forensics, it looks like the bullets are coming from over here. Well, where could somebody have been? They must have been on top of these tanks. Yeah. Well, we can't tell people that we think there was a shooter on top of the tanks. Tell them the tanks got hit. Tell them the tanks got hit.
Yeah, there's also 2, like, I don't even know what they are. It looks like they started building something
over there.
Yeah, 2 like frames or like I don't even know what it is. They started building something and then they stopped. And then I saw a couple videos where it talks about like there is staircases that lead up there, and there is
there are.
Yeah,
there are staircases that lead to the top of the tanks. But what I
not
believe,
even the tanks, but these structures. I don't even. It looks like a beam or something, like some kind of.
Who started building them?
Whoever was building whatever they were going to build there, and then they stopped.
So, needless to say, the FBI, in my opinion, what this is the FBI is pretty sure that shots came from over there. But they can't get onto the Janet Air property. And they can't let anybody know that there was a second shooter because that would jeopardize the investigation, or that they believe there was a second shooter. That would jeopardize the investigation. So there's some other interesting things about this. We showed sort of where that was. Let's go with, so the tank, let's do tank graphic. This is what we're talking about. So you've got these tanks completely on the other side. They're actually, it's 2,000 feet from Mandalay Bay to the fuel tanks. It's 1,000 feet from the fuel tanks down into the Route 91 Harvest Festival. And actually, if you look directly to the north, directly above the fuel tanks, that is the parking lot for Janet Air. That is where I believe the drones were hovering above. That's why I believe that they're out there checking, because they're like, bullets came from here. Bullets came from high up over here. Yeah, they did. They came from next door, from the drone that was hovering right above fucking Janet Air. That's where they came from. But they can't get on there. That's a top secret facility. So let's go with breach. This is the last part, and this is very interesting because this story just popped up. It was a little bit reported, but then it popped up again today, and I thought that it was very, very strange that this would be there. Mccarran's fence breached by people fleeing Las Vegas Strip shooting. About 300 people fleeing the mass shooting at Mandalay Bay managed to break through the security fence surrounding Mccarran International on Sunday night, wandering onto an active airfield, and brought flights to a halt, airport officials said. The fence was breached in 2 areas as concertgoers from Route 91 Harvest Festival streamed into the airport looking for a place to hide, airport spokesman Christine Cruz said on Tuesday. At around 10:15, hold on, I lost my thing. At around 10:15 Sunday, just 7 minutes after the gunman Stephen Paddock started shooting, the breach prompted airport officials to close 2 parallel runways on the airport's western edge closest to the Strip, known as 1L19R and 1R19L. I want you to just take that in as you listen. The shooting is not even over yet, and the airport has closed down the 2 runways closest to Janet Air. They've closed down the runways used by Janet Air, and they've halted flights. The excuse of, we had people on the runway. An hour later, runways 8L26R and 8R26L on the airport's south end were also closed, bringing traffic to a standstill at the nation's 8th busiest airport. The shutdown led to 25 flight diversions on Sunday, with a majority of planes sent to Phoenix. It was unclear how many, but a majority of those planes eventually reached Las Vegas shortly after flights resumed at 12:40 a.m. Monday, crews said. Airport personnel guarded the gash fence until it was repaired at 1:10 a.m. After busting through the security fence, the panic group scattered across the airfield. About 30 of them managed to get as far as Allegiant Air's maintenance facility on the airport's east end, company spokeswoman said. Once inside, they received food, water, blankets, and a chance to charge their cell phones. Clothes were provided to those whose pants or shirts were torn and snagged by broken security fence. Many others found refuge at facilities closer to the airport's western edge, including Signature Flight Support, which handles some of the private jets passing through Mccarran International. Quote, we provided a facility for anybody who needed a place to stay that night with food, water, and some triage, Signature Flight Support General Manager Rita Carrillo says. After several hours of waiting, the group was placed on an airport shuttle bound for an emergency evacuation center at UNLV's Thomas and Mack. So, I know where all those locations are. I know exactly where all those locations are. What I found interesting, this is a Las Vegas Review-Journal story. The owner of the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and this is as far into this part of the story as we're going to go, also owns Sands Corp. And yet Sands Corp is not mentioned in this story as a place where people gathered. It's the closest facility. It's actually next door neighbors to Janet Air. And as a matter of fact, it's the only facility from which we actually have photos of people, if you want to show this Sands. This is from the Sands hangar. Photos taken that night. Go next.
Oh, sorry.
It's a slideshow.
Yeah.
Those are the Sands planes. These are the people getting on that described shuttle. Go next. These are more people in the Sands hangar. You can see the Sands planes in the background. Go next. Now, here's what's interesting. These are people heading in front of the tanks in question, so you can see the tanks in relationship to the size of the people. These are people walking towards the Sands hangar, also walking towards Janet Air. Now, what you don't see here is you don't see people running.
Yeah.
These are people walking, being evacuated to that spot. Now, the thing about the fence getting knocked down, I don't even know where the fuck they'd knock that fence down, because there's no area where there's an open fence even close by. And the fact that they shut down these runways is very, very fucking suspect. So let's show this. Go to route, and we'll show this. I just wanted to show what we're talking about in terms of evacuation route. Okay, so this is the basic thing. Let's go to marked. This is how the people got to Sands. But more important, so you can see the venue, and you can see the line. But more important, you see a line going from Mandalay to the venue. Because if you were going to set somebody up, and if you wanted your person to be able to escape, and you wanted them to be able to escape back to Janet Air, well, we know that groups of people passed right in front of Janet Air because they had to get to Sands. And we know that people were at Sands. That's the easiest way to have somebody have an escape route that takes them past Janet. Now, the last part about this, people have been asking, come back to this, Christian, and then I'll leave it with this. People have been saying, why would the U.S. use this weapon? Why would they use this weapon on U.S. citizens? Why not use it on a battlefield somewhere? Right? Why not use it in some foreign country?
Yeah.
Two answers. First, if you take this drone from the Area 51 or the Tonopah, the testing range out there, you fly it on your Janet airplane, you bring it out at night, you hover it above the Janet Air parking lot. When you're done, you bring it back, you put it in. You have never left the safety of a top secret facility. It's top secret the whole way through. You didn't have to put it on a military plane. You didn't have to file a flight plan. You didn't have to do shit. And as a matter of fact, you don't even have to fly. Maybe they closed them down and a Janadair flight flew out, but there was a flight that there were flights going out from 6 o'clock in the morning the next day anyway. Put it back in the belly of one of your planes that never gets checked, that never has anything, that's got, even the flight attendants have top secret clearance, fly it back, along with whoever did this. And then the question is, why target this?
Yeah.
Why target this? And now I want to show you this slideshow. Squares. And I want you to note that all of these photos that I'm showing, you can look down in the bottom at the legend, they're all the same scale, 200 feet. You'll see that 200 feet thing, and then you'll see the scale. This is Tahrir Square. This was basically where the most recent Egyptian revolution, where all of the people, tens of thousands of people, gathered in the square, and where the police and military decided that they were not going to stop the people from getting out of the square, and the revolution, basically they took over, they had a military coup. Next, this is Maidan Square. This is where the most recent Ukrainian revolution happened, where there were snipers who fired at both police and at protesters, and that not knowing who those snipers were and controlling the narrative, the group that now controls Ukraine was able to take over Ukraine. Let's go next. This is Tiananmen Square. This is where there was almost an uprising in China when we were much younger, and the famous pictures of the tanks that rolled over the guy and killed him when the military had to clear the square themselves to prevent China from being taken over. Next. This is Ghazi Park. This is the place that was occupied recently in Turkey, where the government was able to clear it out before it looked like they were about to have a revolution also in Turkey. Next. This is Zuccotti Park. This was the location of Occupy Wall Street, where it looked like there could be a popular uprising even in the United States until they cleared it. Next. This is the location of the shooting. If you were going to simulate clearing out a square during a popular uprising where there were tens of thousands of civilians in that square, looking at a stage, looking at speakers, you were going to clear it because the police and the military were no longer on your side, and you're a dictator, to prevent yourself from getting overthrown and to clear the square, which is something that dictators have to do. And you were going to have a test of a weapon that could do it. Not only that, but that had all of the things that Maidan had as well, where you could set up people and set up shooters and set up a narrative. This was the perfect test. You could choose the time, you could choose the day, you could do it in your own country where you could control the narrative, because it still is a test. It still is a test, and you have an opportunity to keep it behind a top secret wall. So, you can come back to us. So, where are we?
There we go.
So, we know the facts. I've laid out facts. I've strung some things together that is speculation. But, so I'll do this. I'll tell the story as I believe it happened. I believe Stephen Paddock was chosen. Okay? I believe he was chosen, and I believe that Mary Lou Danley has a connection to Janadair. And I believe that is the connection through which Stephen Paddock was chosen. I believe he was set up. I believe once he was chosen, that a woman was introduced into the mix. I believe that is the mystery woman that they have been reporting that he was with. I believe that his activities, when it relates to his bookings of rooms in Chicago, his bookings of rooms at the Ogden, I believe that that is related to the activity of a 64-year-old man trying to impress and please a young new girlfriend. I believe that those are meant to give him a false sense of security, because they are planning to do it at this other music festival anyway, so you set up these music festivals. I believe that she is involved. I believe that they do not know who she is. They do not know where to find her. Part of the reason that she was picked And that he was picked is because he's a loner, he doesn't communicate with anybody, and he would have been hiding his communications with her.
Right.
I believe that there's a reason why Mary Lou Danley was out of the country. I'm not saying that she is involved. I'm not saying she knew anything about it. But if she is associated with Janet Air, if she is an air hostess at Janet Air, then Stephen Paddock would have been known because they would have known about him through the background check. They could have chosen anybody related. They have surveillance on it would have been normal for there to be surveillance on her even. And for them to do additional background checks. Additionally, when she came back, because she would have had top secret clearance, they could have spirited her away and prevented Las Vegas Metro PD or the FBI from even being able to talk to her. And that would have just been a dead end. They would have said, shut up, this is it. She's got top secret clearance, there's nothing we can do. And they can't talk about it. And I believe that that's what it is. I don't know. I don't know if there was actually, if it was this woman who was shooting out of there. I believe there were other accomplices. I do. I believe those are probably the friends, right? That were staying at the Ogden as well, or that were supposed to show up, that she was traveling to these music festivals with.
Yeah, who knows?
This is what I believe the story is. Now, that's stringing some things together, but it's stringing things together out of the things that are actually true. This is not about crisis actors. This is not about anything. The device that I'm talking about exists. The device that I'm talking about has been said by the Department of Defense to be something that they highly value. They put their money where their mouth is. The location is there. There's omissions.
Yeah.
The FBI is investigating in the exact area that they would investigate if they thought that shots were coming from that area. Airport is shut down, even after the shooting stops.
Yeah, this is, I mean, especially for the conspiracies, it's very real. You know, I've seen a lot of people talk.
It's real.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talking about like, oh, this, you know, there's two sides to this. So one, the conspiracy theory people, this is very, very real. Two, for the people that say don't become a conspiracy theorist and say all this stuff. Well, it needs to be there because we need to, just like you said with software, the bugs need to be figured out.
Well, and all I'm asking is, so we've presented all of this evidence, right? I'm like, tell the story then.
Yeah.
You tell the story, right? Tell the better story because as far as I see it, unless somebody wants to tell me which piece I have not addressed, or is there an additional piece of evidence that you can point to that would refute this? Because to me, it's obvious.
Yeah.
It's very, very fucking obvious to me.
Man, it's crazy.
Now, that's why I actually feel secure in us. You know, we've talked about presenting something, and I had a bit of anxiety. But why I feel secure in presenting this is these people are in the wind and untouchable. We're talking about top secret security clearance. There's nothing they can do. I believe Las Vegas Police Department knows, but what the fuck can they do?
Nobody can do anything.
They'll be prosecuted if they say anything, or if anything gets out about them. It's probably only known at the top level. And they may not even know fully who it is. And top secret clearance is compartmentalized, so even the other people who are working at that facility don't know.
Right.
They wouldn't know either. This is a small group of people who did this. Now, how will I be proven right? It won't be now, but it'll probably be in 5 or 6 years when they will tell us that these weapons exist. Because they're going to use them. They're going to automate the military. To understand what this weapon means, to understand what it would mean to have this weapon working, it's a replacement of all infantry forces. It's to be able to send boots on the ground and not a single American ever gets killed. Because that's what an infantryman is. He's just a weapon. He's a rifle.
Right.
He's the trigger on the rifle. That's what he is. That's all he is. He's nothing without his rifle. Nothing. Without his weapon, he's nothing. This is one of the most groundbreaking innovations. It's completely different.
Yeah, it changes everything.
Changes everything. And that's why it's worth killing 60 people. So, we're going to leave it at that, dude.
Yeah.
We still have Ray. We've got time. We're going to go a little bit over today. let's do this. We're going to skip the ads for everything today. This was a big one. Thank you for going through this with me. Let's just go ahead. We'll go to break, and then we will come directly back, and we'll go to Ray's interview. All right, we are back on the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. And of course, we are streaming on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post. And now, thank you for sticking with us because great interview. Actually had to record this just a little bit earlier because he is based out of Thailand. So this is a great interview with the creator of BitChute, Ray Vahey. Very important considering the fact that I think that our Facebook feed actually got cut during this again. So as we talk about solutions to prevent censorship, especially of stories like the one that we just spent 2 hours painstakingly going over, this is somebody that you need to listen to. So Christian, if you will. My guest today is Ray Vahey. Ray is a software developer and content creator. He created the RockstarLittle Network on YouTube and is the creator of BitChute, a peer-to-peer web torrent-based video sharing platform that we are now exclusively using with Activist Post since we have been kicked off of YouTube. Ray, welcome to the Vin Armani Show.
Thanks for having me, Vin. I've been watching this show for years, so it's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'm glad that you are. I'm glad that you're with us, and I'm glad that you have created what it is that you have created. I want to talk to you a little bit. We share a lot in common as both content creators and software developers. So for me, the content was first, and then I kind of got into the software to help move that along as there were things that I needed. Which direction was it for you?
Well, I have been working in telecoms for most of my career, so I was always a software developer. And when I got into doing YouTube, it was just really a hobby for me. I never took it on full time. So definitely the software development. I've got a background of over 20 years in that.
So it's just so people can know a little bit about this content. I was just recently introduced. I don't know why it just got onto my radar, but the popularity of the kids' content that's out there, that some of these content creators with some very, very simple stuff are getting hundreds of millions of views on their channels. Talk to us a little bit about how you decided to take that on. I went and I checked out your channel and I see that you have some multi-million view pieces of content. Yeah. Talk to us about that process and how you decided to do that.
I'm surprised you even noticed that. I don't even advertise that these days. But yeah, I mean, I think I've got something like 20 odd videos on there and about 23 million views now, so it's doing pretty good per video. The thing about kids content is that it's evergreen, so when you create a nursery rhyme, for example, parents for generation after generation will know the name of nursery rhymes as their kids arrive, and they'll go on YouTube and or whatever video sharing site, hopefully BitChute, and they'll search for the terms that are evergreen terms, and that means that you don't have to keep producing the same volume as a normal YouTube channel. You can produce once and then get views over and over again for the life of the content.
So obviously right now we're dealing with this whole demonetization issue. You know, sites like channels like ours are getting taken down completely. We're seeing this massive increase in censorship coming from people where I think that most of us weren't really expecting that this was going to be the angle that was going to be taken. Can you talk to us about what made you decide to start? Well, first, let's maybe we could start here. Can we talk a little bit about what BitChute is and how it's different from the traditional sites, the YouTubes, the Vimeos, just engineering-wise, how it's different and why it's become an alternative for those of us who are worried about getting our stuff pulled down?
Okay, so there are many video sharing sites over the years. There's been many, like you mentioned, Vimeo, YouTube. But the thing they have in common is that they've taken a centralized approach. So these companies set up all the infrastructure that they will need to serve the content. And that can run, video is probably the most expensive, or definitely the most expensive social media type platform you can build. And with a centralized approach, you need to have all of the infrastructure worldwide. Now, there is, if you look at the whole of the internet, you'll see that YouTube is a massive part of the bandwidth that's consumed each day on the internet. But there is another thing on the internet that is not quite as big, but in the same ballpark, and that's BitTorrent. And BitTorrent doesn't have the money that YouTube has. It's based on ordinary people turning on their computers and sharing some of their bandwidth. And yet it's able to grow to a comparable size with YouTube. So BitChute is an extension of that. It's based on webtorrent. And the idea behind this is to take the benefits of BitTorrent and combine that with the usability of YouTube. So rather than having to go to all these BitTorrent sites and search for torrent files and all the complexities of installing software that you get with BitTorrent, none of that is in WebTorrent. You can just open your browser, click on a video like you would on another video sharing site, and it will instantly start streaming. And you will instantly become a peer. So some of your bandwidth will go to someone else. And that network, as the site grows and more people are appearing, that network becomes more and more resilient. It's able to serve more and more bandwidth. And the costs are far, far lower than if you try to do this in a traditional way.
So what was it that spurred you on to, clearly it wasn't that you got your kids' content ripped down. What was it that spurred you on? I mean, I know you and I have interacted on Twitter, some over the course of the last couple years and whatnot, so I know that politically and philosophically you're aligned this way. Maybe if you could talk with us a little bit about how you came to the views that you have, and then how that shaped your decision, or what was the turning point that made you decide, okay, I think this is a good project for me to take on.
Yeah, so I've been watching over the last 2 years at least, since 2015, people like yourself, like James Corbett, who I know you know well,
yep.
Talking about the coming clampdown on YouTube. And really there wasn't many people talking about it at that time, but the points that you guys were making made an awful lot of sense to me. I could see that some people were already being demonetized, and it seemed like this was only going in one direction. And it was late last year that I decided, well, is there something I can do about it? And I thought, well, I've got the experience, I've got contacts who have built massive infrastructure on the internet. And I thought, right, it's time to throw my hat in the ring and do something. Because I really value alternative media. I think the world is a better place for having more points of view. And I just wanted to get involved, really. So that was the thing that kicked it off, the thing that started me down this route.
So when it comes to BitTorrent, I know that there was news about some of the bigger sites like Kick-Ass Torrents, and before that Pirate Bay getting taken down. What's the relationship between what it is that you do at BitChute and sites like that? Like, do you run a similar risk at some point of them being able to shut you down in that way, or are there some significant differences that would prevent something like that from happening to you guys?
The biggest difference is that the majority of those sites cater to pirated content, copyright material from Hollywood, from the music industry, and that's why so much money is thrown against them, because people can get that content for free and do. Right. And we're catering to a completely different audience. We're going after people who want to just show their own work, and are not able to because they're being shut down by YouTube. So we're not expecting Hollywood to come after us because we're not messing with Hollywood. In fact, we don't want people to upload that sort of content to the site. We don't want the latest blockbuster movie or the latest series. We want the type of content that people have become used to seeing on YouTube, like Activist Post, like the Armani show, and anything that creators do, not just limited to politics, but the whole full spectrum. So I think that is really going to set us apart from the traditional BitTorrent.
So yeah, and in terms of the type of content, I know that obviously early on Corbett was I think he's actually the person who may have introduced us to your site. So we know James Corbett's on there. We're definitely on there now. As you've looked at the people who have picked this thing up, are there any other content creators out there that you have that have sort of, it's been a point of discovery for you as you've looked at your own site, or any other things, any other content creators that you've gotten excited about that you maybe didn't know about that you could share with us?
Well, every day there's new signups. I mean, there's people, like I was just chatting earlier to a guy called Suit Yourself his channel is Suit Yourself from Australia, who I now consider a friend because I talk to him so much on the Messenger. There's, some really big channels have come over as well, like Mark Dice is a very large channel that was on YouTube, who's come over to BitChute. Prison Planet is a massive channel who's endorsed us publicly. There's so many, and it's fascinating because there's a lot of channels that I wouldn't have expected to be demonetized that have come over. For example, there's a channel called Climate State, which is pro man-made global warming, and they were getting
really
hassle on YouTube. Really, so that really surprised me because I expected it to be the other way entirely, but no, it seems that the net of who is being targeted is expanding all the time.
That's very, very interesting. Well, I guess it's about controlling the narrative at the end of the day. I mean, so as you're watching this, maybe just to get into a broader discussion, your thoughts as someone who, as you say, you're hearing the stories of these content creators coming in. Where do you see the timeline for this clampdown happening? Because obviously you have a front row seat. We can't see everybody that's getting demonetized, obviously, but if anybody can see them, certainly you can, because when they get demonetized or when they get banned, they head on over to you as one of the top alternatives right now. How are you seeing the timeline since you first released this to now when it's gaining traction? What are you hearing? Is this increasing? What do you see happening in the background?
It's definitely picking up. Things are getting faster all the time. In a way, we weren't expecting it to happen so quick, and Activist Post was a big surprise even to me, because you had a channel there that wasn't really talking about breaking news. It was talking about discussions, if anything. So it's hard to see how they could justify just deleting out the blue a channel like that. I see 2018 being full of surprises. I would be surprised if we get to the end of 2018 and YouTube isn't a completely different beast altogether. It's fine if you're ideologically aligned with YouTube. Anyone who's making the content that's very PC, that's the sort of content that you can already get on the mainstream media, those guys are not being affected.
So we're talking about a broader context then. I mean, it's not just about a particular piece of content, it's about every piece of content and the type of influence that people have. I mean, could you just expand a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so you even see in the mainstream media people like PewDiePie getting targeted by the Washington Post. that is amazing. I mean, the guy is just playing computer games. The thing he has in common is that he has massive influence. And I think that is what the mainstream media is really fearful of. Because you see these cable companies, people are cutting their cable record numbers. You see the BBC, the average BBC viewer is over 60 years old. These are dying organisations, and they need to figure something out. And I think that is in part behind what is going on YouTube. Pressures being applied, advertisements are being removed, and they really fear any sort of major influence in the long term.
So this is important. You know, I have a lot of people who are asking me, particularly when it's rare that I get a developer on, right? So often I'm asked, because especially young guys in particular, they know that I'm a software developer, they know I'm working on certain things, and they ask me always, like, where should I start? What should I do? As you look around, you know, with your project, I know that you're looking forward certainly with the things that you'd like to do, but also with other components that you think could add to freedom. I'm sure there are other projects that you've thought of in your head, or other concepts that you think would add to the whole mix. What do you think are still additional? We've got BitChute, and I know, like, I myself am working on the similar implementation of that with IPFS, right? Doing the node in the browser with JavaScript and all of that. So I think there are a lot of alternatives for that with media. Are there other things that you see that are sort of links in the chain that could help this whole process along?
Oh, there's so many. One major one, which has been in the news recently, is DNS. That's when you connect to a website, you're connecting to a domain that uses the DNS system, and that is a major choke point on the internet, because once your domain is confiscated, then your site, even if it's technically running on servers, it's not accessible to people to see. So there are efforts in that field. I'd like to see more efforts towards decentralizing DNS completely, and I think that can be done with blockchain technology. Right now it's a pyramid structure, so top-down delegation from one link in the pyramid to the next. But with blockchain, that's a completely decentralized database, and there's no reason in the future why the blockchain couldn't hold all the DNS type records.
Yeah. Since we're talking about money in this regard with blockchain, I think a lot of people, they hear BitChute and they think nowadays they probably think that it's probably dealing with Bitcoin. What are your thoughts on? You've got people getting demonetized, you've got people getting kicked off YouTube, and they're moving over. Some of these channels were making quite a bit of money. What are your thoughts on monetization, either the plans that you guys have with BitChute, or thoughts or advice that you have for creators who are moving over to BitChute, who are thinking about, how can I start monetizing my content? What are the options in that regard?
That's a major focus point for us at the moment, and we're working on several different monetization options. Each of them is going to be an opt-in option to the user. So we are looking at cryptocurrency, but we're also looking at more traditional routes as well, because some of the feedback I've had is that, people are very excited about Bitcoin and the blockchain, but it's not something I would want to do exclusively, because there's still a lot of people who haven't moved over to that. So it'd be probably better to get them in the door and then introduce them to the blockchain. And I think that would be a better way to do it. But we're looking at a subscription-based model, so people can sign up to your account in the same way that they would sign up to Patreon, but it will just be a different type of Patreon. We're looking at tipping, micropayments, and we're also looking at an advertising model. Now, I know a lot of people probably think, oh, advertising, but that's still a very proven method, and it's even though a lot of people don't like it, there's an awful lot of people who do. So we do want to have that as an option as well, and we've done already some deals to make that possible, and we're working on the development side of it. So I'm quite excited that we're going to have a good broad range of different types of monetization options. In addition, we are also looking at our own cryptocurrency, and we haven't fully decided the way we're going to go with that yet. We want to make sure that it's definitely a long-term sustainable currency. It's not inflation-based or anything like that. So that's the trick. But I expect at some point we'll have something like a internal cryptocurrency.
So what about, I know that right now you're running on the web, you're running on your site. I certainly have some of your videos embedded into my site. I like that the embed in WordPress works fantastic. What about apps? What about mobile apps? Does the protocol that you're using, is that going to allow for apps in the future? Is that somewhere down the line for you guys? Are you guys working on that? What's the situation with apps?
Definitely. We're working on iPhone and Android. Everyone is asking for an app currently. We're getting those out the door as quick as we can. The interesting thing about apps, as you brought that up, is that really now there's only two players in the App Store field. That's Google and Apple. And they've recently shown that they're prepared to ban apps for other social media sites. So we are a bit concerned about that. It could be that we make these apps and they get removed for hate speech, as it's called. But we'll have to deal with that when it comes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think that's. I'm glad that you came on. I can't wait to share with everybody your site, and I want to really contribute to making it grow because I think that it's important what you guys did. I'm glad you stepped into the breach and you were there early. I think it's really important when someone's philosophically aligned like that. Is there anything that you'd like to leave people with? I mean, either about the site, about things that they should be on the lookout for, or just thoughts that you have in general that you'd like to share with content creators as they try to navigate this new world that we're dealing with?
Well, please do go and sign up for the site. Even if we don't have everything today, the site is changing rapidly. We're adding new features week by week. You'll notice improvements. We're taking feedback as well. People are free to contact me and contact the BitChute account on Twitter with any suggestions. We'd love getting input. We're also looking at a donation-based model. So we do have a Patreon account ourselves at the moment until we get our own thing set up. So if anyone wants to contribute to us in that way or through PayPal, then we would love that. That would really help us grow. That model has worked really well for massive sites on the internet like Wikipedia and WikiLeaks, just pure donations. So it's not our entire plan, but it could be a really amazing way, a beautiful way to sustain a platform without having external influences from any large players.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being on, Ray Vahey of BitChute. You can go check them out, bitchute.com. If you're a content creator, I'm going to advise you, go and get your stuff backed up on their site, even if you are already on YouTube, even if you haven't yet been demonetized, because we at Activist Post had 0 strikes and we got terminated and still no explanation from them about why. So if you're doing anything worthwhile, I think now is the time to get it backed up. Here's a great resource for you. So Ray Vahey of BitChute, thank you so much for being on, and we will have you back again to talk about updates to the site and to you guys' platform.
Thanks so much, Ben. It's my pleasure.
All right, talk to you soon. So, Christian, next week we'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing with IPFS. Want to really thank Ray.
Awesome.
What they're doing with BitChute is important. All of our stuff is there. I believe it's just bitchute.com/activistpost. That's where we're sticking up all of our clips. The clip of this particular episode will certainly be there in terms of our breakdown of what happened here in Vegas. I'm also going to put it on my YouTube page, my YouTube channel. Let's see if that gets my YouTube shut down or not. But I want to thank you, dude, for helping through all of that. I think that was the longest and most intricate deep dive that we've done yet.
By
but
far,
since it happened in our hometown, I think it was well worth it.
Yeah.
So any thoughts before we go? This was a long one. This is a special edition.
I mean, kind of what we just talked about. You know, we were observing police scanners and stuff like that, and I thought they did amazing, man. Like,
I think that's one thing that needs to be said. Like, in this story, that one of the most important parts about it is that I do think that Metro is being hamstringed. I think there are people, I'm sure the sheriff has been told to not inquire onto certain things. I'm sure that Metro has a lot more information than they're even being allowed to let out. I listened to the police scanners too. Metro did a hell of a job. They did a hell of a job before, a hell of a job after, you know what I mean? So it's like, I feel really, really bad for those guys that they're not able to solve this and that they're being made to look bad. But, you know, what can you do? And as far as the people who did it, you know, they're behind a top secret firewall that, you know, it's going to prevent any of us from actually being able to do anything except to just tell the story. And as for telling the story, dude, like, this is it for me. I'm done talking about it, right? I was obsessing over it during the week.
I did too.
I wanted to let everything get out. And for me, like, I'm done. I'm done.
Well, you know, the good thing is to recognize too that the bad things are universally, the bad things are only there for the good, you know?
Well, there you go. And I mean, I don't know what good comes out of this except for the fact that people should be aware that this weapon system exists and they should be on the lookout. But not to be scared. I mean, like...
Yeah, I think that's the major thing, too, is not to be scared.
No, I agree. And this is like, there was no way anybody could have prevented this. This is a bunch of psychopaths doing what psychopaths do. And I think that is one good lesson, and it's one lesson that we take away as certainly as agorists, as voluntarists, as crypto savages, that like part of the reason that we want to move to alternatives is because when you concentrate power, top secret clearances, access to weapons in a place that can be accessed, psychopaths will try to access it. They will get access, and acts like this happen one way or the other. So let me say goodbye to the people, dude. Thank you for today.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, this was a good one and a long one. I want to thank my guest, Ray Vahey, and please go and check out BitChute. This episode will be up there as well. If you want to check us out on podcast, those are already being served off IPFS, so that's uncensorable. Thank you very much. You can do that going to iTunes and or Stitcher. We'll be back again, God willing, Monday, 10 a.m. next week. Until then, stay free.